Space exploration is dangerous. So far, 18 astronauts have lost their lives during space missions. However, most of these deaths were due to accidents within our atmosphere during takeoff or landing. In this article, we will remember the unfortunate journey of Soyuz 11, the only fatal accident to have occurred in space. The space age began under the shadow of intense competition between the Soviet Union, led by Russia, and the United States during the period known as the Cold War. From the very beginning, it was seen as a race between these two superpowers. The Soviets were initially far ahead in the race, particularly in the area of manned spaceflight. They humiliated the United States by launching the first artificial satellite in 1957 and putting the first human in orbit in 1961. The United States turned the topic into a matter of national pride, and President Kennedy announced that they aimed to send a man to the moon and bring him back before the end of the 1960s. The Soviet Union did not have the habit of announcing their plans beforehand for fear of failure. They preferred to declare their success and boast after the fact. However, it was already known that they had also set their sights on the moon before the Americans and were developing a project. This time luck smiled upon the United States. Despite some setbacks, they managed to orbit 3 astronauts around the moon and bring them back in 1968. In 1969, they successfully returned 2 men to Earth after walking on the surface of the moon. After several accidents during the development of their rockets and the untimely death of the legendary engineer Sergei Korolev, the Soviet Union realized that the United States was going to win this stage of the space race. Since the project was extremely expensive, they quietly cancelled it, and to this day, no person who is not American has walked on the moon. However, the Soviet Union knew a way to get ahead again. Much more intelligent and much cheaper things could be done in space than sending humans to the moon for a few hours. They could stay there permanently. As planned by Korolev in his final years, they would establish a permanent space station in Earth's orbit. Unlike the giant structure that orbits the Earth today, the first space stations were designed to be launched as a single piece, rather than being assembled piece by piece in orbit. The Salyut 1 station was launched on April 19, 1971, and boosted the morale of the Soviet Union. If they could also send a team to this station, they would have established a system where humans could stay in space for long periods of time. This was important because at that time, some experts claimed that the human body could not withstand weightlessness for long periods of time. The death of a monkey due to heart failure after a 9-day flight in a U.S. capsule had also increased concerns. After being launched on April 23 with 3 cosmonauts on board, the Soyuz 10 spacecraft reached the station's door 1 day later. But unfortunately, it just remained at the door. The mechanical system that would have ensured a successful docking failed, and the cosmonauts couldn't open the door and enter. After a pointless journey, they returned to Earth on April 25. And the hope now rested on Soyuz 11 with a new crew consisting of Alexei Leonov, Valery Kubasov, and Pyotr Kolodin, who were set to make another attempt to force open the door in June. For days before the planned launch date, a chest X-ray revealed tuberculosis suspicion in Kubasov, and according to the rules, the entire crew was removed from the mission, and the backup crew, who had trained together, were brought in: Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev. On June 6, Soyuz 11 with the 3 cosmonauts on board successfully docked with Salyut 1 after hours of effort. As Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev entered the station, they were met with the smell of burnt and smoke in the air, and they fixed the ventilation system, becoming the first humans to work on a space station. They became darlings of the public with live TV broadcasts. On the 11th day, they had to deal with problems such as an electrical fire and the treadmill they used for daily exercises shaking the entire station. On June 29, the command center became concerned about these malfunctions and decided not to push their luck, ending the planned mission early for 1 month. After all, the Soviet Union had already achieved an incredible record for staying in space. The 3 comrades got into the Soyuz 11 spacecraft that would take them back to Earth and closed the hatch. They were wearing regular working clothes made of fabric. The landing module of the Soyuz, which consisted of 3 modules, was too small to accommodate 3 people wearing bulky astronaut suits. They left the first space station in history behind and initiated the descent process. When the Mission Control Center said, "Farewell, Yentar, until we meet again with Mother Earth shortly," Dobrovolsky responded, "Thank you, see you soon. I'm starting the guidance." The 3 parts of the Soyuz would separate from each other at this stage, and the sections other than the descent module carrying the cosmonauts would be abandoned in space to burn up in the atmosphere later. The small explosives used to separate the modules did not fire at intervals as they should have, but all at once. The excessive force caused damage to a hatch that was supposed to open to equalize the pressure inside and outside the landing module after it entered the atmosphere. The small explosive devices used to separate the modules were fired simultaneously rather than at intervals, resulting in the damage. As a result, when the hatch was opened at an altitude of 168 kilometers, air leaked out into space from the cabin. The cosmonauts should have been able to understand what happened in their final seconds. The position of Patsayev's body suggests that he was trying to reach the hatch and close it. Speculation suggests that all 3 became immobilized within 20 seconds due to lack of oxygen, and may have remained conscious for another 40 seconds before losing consciousness. The capsule entered the atmosphere at the planned angle and the parachutes were automatically deployed. At this point, Mission Control, unaware of what had happened, attempted to establish radio contact but received no response. The descent module landed softly in Kazakhstan and appeared to be in normal condition. When the recovery team reached the landing site by helicopter, they found the exterior of the capsule to be normal. However, they were in for a shock when they opened the hatch. The 3 cosmonauts were lying motionless, with dark blue marks on their faces and blood streaming from their noses and ears. The cosmonauts wouldn't have died if they had been in their space suits during the landing. After the accident, the Soyuz spacecraft was redesigned. Due to this interruption in Soviet manned space flights, no further visits were made to Salyut 1. On October 11, the first space station in history was commanded to enter the atmosphere and disintegrate. Soyuz spacecrafts are still in use today, and are considered to be the safest manned spacecrafts. A monument stands today in the steps where Soyuz 11 landed in memory of the 3 cosmonauts. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment for better content and narration.